on History Unsolved, we uncovered the secrets behind the American home front during World War II. Montage of images, / videos, intense music. Oh, wait. Nobody really knows what happened during World War II, but today we go deep into the lives of Americans and find the hidden secrets that have been long forgotten.
You know, actually, I think it's kind of funny that we talk about World War II like it really happened, because we all know that it was just a conspiracy created by the U.S. government.
Wait, what?
Yep. Why don't we get started? Franklin, 1944. Corporal David Laughlin Jr. began fighting in the war.
It's a real thing.
That's what you think.
Oh my god.
David lived on Beaver Street. His classmates said that he tried really hard to be a tough guy, but he just wasn't. He also knew how to have a good time and had a nice sense of humor. Laughlin joined the war 2 months before Pearl Harbor and fought in the Mariana Islands. After that, he was sent to Iwo Jima, where he passed away.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late.
Ah! Ah! Ah!
Although we joke, violence is a very serious issue that we deal with in this video.
So, the Baton Death March. Let's talk about Captain William Dice's experiences.
Oh, you mean his experience?
Okay. Well, during the Baton Death March, he went through a lot, and I mean a lot. I don't think a normal person could come up with these kinds of experiences, the details that he came up with. So, like, listen to this.
Before we could grasp what was happening, the black-faced giant had swung his sword. I remember how the sun flashed on it. There was a swish and a kind of chopping thud like a cleaver going through beef. The captain's head seemed to jump off his shoulders. It hit the ground in front of him and went rolling crazily from side to side between the lines of prisoners. The body fell forward. I have seen wounds, but never such a gush of blood as this. The heart continued to pump for a few seconds, and at each beat there was another great spurt of blood. The white dust around our feet was turned into crimson mud. I saw the hands were opening and the closing spasmodically. Then I looked away.
Just listen to the horrifying details. I mean, who would want to make that up?
I would.
Cutler, no.
Well, that wasn't the end of the brutality, though. For the sake of brevity, I'll keep it short. But they walked for miles in the heat without water, and sat in sunlight for many hours, in the harsh sunlight, dehydrated. And then, once they made it to the camps, the conditions were absolutely despicable.
Wow, that sounds terrible.
Wow, looks like the government got really creative with their stories.
Okay, well, how about the Battle of the Coral Sea? That one isn't that important, but we still have records of people there. I would repeat a quote from a soldier. However, a lot of them were far too explicit and said words that I am not comfortable repeating, so I will not. But in the Battle of the Coral Sea, there was a lot of naval combat, and most of the people were like either under the deck of the ship or like flying on a fighter plane. So these people were like, one story I heard was that the engineers under the deck were like just kept on working even though there's fires happening and stuff. Then they rushed to the top when they absolutely had to, and apparently very calmly exited.
Calm? During a battle? Sounds fake to me.
Well, keep in mind, these are professionally trained soldiers. There's just no room to panic during warfare.
Well, I personally just don't believe it.
What does it take to convince you? You are literally...
Good people, good people, good people. Let's just move on.
December 7th, 1941.
Gosh, what the heck? Who are you? Oh my... What?
Where did
What?
you come from?
It's just me, guys. So anyway.
Pearl Harbor, the day that will live in infamy.
So apparently the soldiers positioned Hawaii quickly realized it wasn't a normal situation.
Oh, How so?
The noise was unbearable, ear-rattling even.
And what did the scene look like? How could you see?
The first thing you would notice is the air, gray all over. There was so much smoke and debris you could barely see.
What about the planes?
And the boats.
The planes looked like they were going to crash into each other at any second. They were all going in different directions and seemed so disorganized and confused. As for the ships, that's another story. Some say it was an unforgettable sight. Several ships were engulfed in smoke and drowning in flames.
Any specifics on the ship's sinkings?
Definitely. The Oklahoma went outside within 20 minutes. Also, the flames surrounding the Arizona were so intense that any human who was even near it immediately became like human torches.
Wow, Japan seemed really prepared. They looked like they knew exactly what they were doing and had like solid war strategies.
Yeah, the chaos was unbearable. It lasted hours and hours through several major attacks.
With over 2,000 casualties, 18 sunken ships, and 300 U.S. aircraft damages, President Roosevelt was right. It truly is a day that will live in infamy.
And it was all for an oil embargo. Come on, Japan. Over 120,000 people were held in Japanese internment camps in America.
Whoa. That's a lot. What was it all for?
It was because they were Japanese. Japanese Americans who were born in America. Besides their ancestry, they didn't have many ties to Japan, but they were still wrongfully punished.
Americans were scared of them, weren't they?
Yeah, really scared. They put them behind barbed wire fences. It was one of their chances of interaction with the outside world.
What about life on the camps?
Adults could get paid around $5 a day. Everyone dined at a hall, and children had access to school. Life wasn't easy for them, though. If anyone rebelled against any of the rules, they would get shot.
Was there any way to get out?
Actually, yeah. Someone could sponsor you and secretly get you out of the camps, so you could live a better life. Once everyone was liberated, each person got around $20,000. There was something for them, but it didn't change the negative experiences they had.
Hey, you need help?
Yeah, I need help getting out of this camp.
What can I do?
You can probably sponsor me and get me out to a different city. That would be amazing.
Alright, but where do you want me to go?
Probably somewhere on the East Coast, just out of here, because they don't really care what race you are. These internment camps are terrible. They're really terrible conditions. I just need to get out.
The Battle of Berlin.
Although the fighting of the battles was gruesome and accounted for the major portions of the war, there were some encounters of innocent people scarred by their experiences during the war.
In the Battle of Berlin, the Red Army, also known as the Soviet Army of Russia or the Soviet Union, invaded Germany in Berlin.
The innocent folk of Germany, similar to the many other civilians in World War II, faced scarring attacks, as well as the soldiers. There were many claims of German women being raped during the Battle of Berlin. Such events weren't uncommon during the war, and often went fairly unnoticed, or at least were ignored.
D-Day.
All the battles during World War II led up to this moment, and the U.S. as well as the other allies worked on planning this event. However, for over 2 years it was postponed, until the spring of 1944. The Great Invasion finally happened. Their code name for it, Operation Overlord, and their final name, D-Day.
In order to have the perfect invasion, the Allies needed to choose the best location for optimal attackage.
First, they needed their fighter planes from the airfields in England to be able to reach this location.
Being in such close proximity allowed the planes to watch over the troops.
They could fight longer as they could refuel.
And it was much easier for transporting troops, supplies, and equipment.
The Allies were thinking of the French coast facing the English Channel as the most optimal location. However, there were some negatives involved. 1, the French coast had poor weather for the small boats, and 2, the troops weren't as close to Germany as they would like to be. However, if they were closer to Germany, the aircraft from England wouldn't be able to reach it.
The Germans assumed the Allies would choose this location, and so they put a lot of weaponry there, including underwater mines.
These German obstacles were known as the Atlantic Wall. However, the Germans had to guess where the Allies would land, because they couldn't cover everything. And guess what?
What?
They guessed wrong.
Once they chose a location, the Allies had to decide if they wanted to capture a port or land on the beaches.
A port would be useful because they could use it to transfer goods, food, and ammunition. However, they knew the Germans were going to expect this and would fortify it, making it very dangerous for the Allies to capture it. Additionally, if the ports were even captured and the Allies moved into the cities, they assumed the German households would be fortified with weaponry that would easily attack the Allies, making it very difficult to move even farther and causing many casualties.
The Allies finally decided they would land on a beach with supplies and then capture the port. The beaches of Normandy needed to be wide enough, narrow enough, and not have hills or mountains surrounding them because the Germans would be able to shoot them down.
The Allies chose the eastern end of the English Canal, which was close to Germany and their industrial areas where their weapons were built. If this succeeded, the Germans would be greatly impacted by this, as it would cut off their ability to make weaponry. But the Germans also expected this area to be attacked because of these reasons, so they protected it very heavily. The weather was a very large determining factor of when this attack would be held. First, they needed enough moonlight so that they could see the German obstacles underwater.
On June 4th, there was terrible weather. The Allies feared that they would lose casualties and that the Germans would sneak through with the fog.
Reverse psychology alert! Many Germans thought that because of all these implications, the U.S. and the other allies wouldn't attack. But the U.S. and the other allies thought that the weather would hold up for just long enough for the attack. So, they moved along with it. The allies crammed their ships with seasick soldiers.
Also, the Allies bombed northern France's roads so that Germany couldn't move supplies.
If the invasion were delayed, the Germans could repair the roads, and this would give away the exact location of the invasion, making it very unsuccessful if they were to move forward later.
The airborne attack.
The parachuters were scattered, separated from the other soldiers, caught in trees, just waiting for the Germans to shoot them down. The separated soldiers slowly formed together and attacked small areas. Yes, many died from the operation, But the Germans were confused about the situation and didn't know how many paratroopers were dropped. So, they made it harder for them to attack or avoid being attacked.
Although there were many losses in the process of Operation Overlord, or D-Day, the great strength and perseverance of the Allied soldiers helped them to win the battle. If they had not won, the Allies would have had to come to an agreement or compromise with Germany, changing the world as we know it.
So, basically, America wasn't confident that the Holocaust was actually happening until around early 1943. And even then, there was still skepticism. There were many hints at it in the newspapers, although it was still a very neglected issue.
Even magazines like Time and Life completely ignored the issue until around 1944.
When Americans found out about the camps, they were completely distraught and baffled by what they had saw. A reporter recorded a conversation between two soldiers in which one said, "No one will ever believe us," to which the other soldiers replied, "We gotta talk about it. See? We gotta talk about it if anyone believes us or not."
Another reporter for the New York Herald Tribune recorded that the prisoners hugged Americans and kissed the ground at their feet when they entered the Dachau camp.
So, America went through a lot of changes during the war. People had to completely change their lifestyles to support the war effort.
Letters between families and soldiers were very valued. Some people wrote 2 or more letters a day.
Almost all foods were rationed. People wondered how long it would be before they could have a banana. There were often shortages of butter. Also, there was some resentment between people in the rural and urban areas because the people in the cities were getting more butter and meat. Overall, people were just tired of eating the same food over and over again.
To help with that, they planted victory gardens. There were over 20 million gardens planted in 1943.
Scrap drives were held in order to collect materials for the war. The home front had shortages of rubber and copper. They made their pennies out of steel in order to save the copper. Schools spent time collecting scraps with programs like Get in the Scrap.
Not only were the lifestyles of Americans changing, but new nuclear power was developed as well. Enrico Fermi developed the first controlled nuclear chain reaction December 2nd, 1942.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, since you asked, this nuclear chain reaction was harnessed in a nuclear reactor, which means the energy created was able to be utilized, reducing the need for coal-burning power plants and therefore reducing pollution.
Wow, sounds interesting.
Yep, and the first one was built under a football stadium, but it was moved to a less populated area due to the potential danger of a meltdown.
Yikes!